There is a place in the Black Hills of South Dakota where the ponderosa pines grow so thick the light comes through in columns. I don't just know that place. I am from that place. My family's roots run deep into that ground. Generations of people who built their lives in the shadow of those hills, who know the names of the creeks, who remember the land before it became a destination. The Black Hills are not a backdrop to my story. They are my story. And there is a road in Rifle, Colorado, Highway 13, where you pass a long, low, engineered mound built into the earth. It does not look like much, a grassy hill, a fence line, some monitoring equipment. I lived 10 miles from that mound for over a decade. I drove past it hundreds of times. What is buried inside it is the legacy of uranium mining. 4 million cubic yards of radioactive tailings, moved there so they would stop leaching into the ground and the water. The cleanup took years. The monitoring never stops. Now a Texas company wants to mine uranium on the southwestern edge of the Black Hills. The federal government approved the first construction step 5 days ago. I have something to say about that. The project is called Dewey Burdock. It is named for 2 small rural communities near Edgemont, South Dakota, Fall River County, Custer County, along the southwestern edge of the Black Hills. The company behind it is enCore Energy Corporation. They are based in Dallas, Texas. They trade on the NASDAQ under the ticker EU. Their wholly owned subsidiary, PowerTech USA Incorporated, holds the permits. This project has been in regulatory and legal limbo for nearly 20 years. On June 16, 2026, 5 days ago, the Bureau of Land Management issued a final decision authorizing PowerTech to begin constructing infrastructure on approximately 240 acres of federal land. Access roads, groundwater monitoring wells, overhead power lines, that is what the document says. The document also says this: no uranium extraction is authorized, no production well fields, no processing facilities, no wastewater impoundments, not yet, but the machinery is now moving. The path that got us here runs through a federal program called Fast 41, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, Title 41. The Dewey Burdock project was added to the Fast 41 Fast Track Permitting Program on August 28, 2025, under President Trump's executive order directing federal agencies to accelerate domestic critical mineral production. The Federal Permitting Council says Fast 41 can cut 18 months off a project's review time. Here's what else the documents say. Dewey Burdock is not the only uranium proposal in the Black Hills. There are 3: Dewey Burdock, the Cord Project, Wolf Canyon. As of September 2025, 259,014 acres of the Black Hills are currently under active mining claims. That is approximately 17% of the entire Black Hills region, 17%. The method enCore Energy plans to use is called in situ recovery, ISR. You will hear the company describe it as minimal surface disturbance, low impact, clean. Here's how it actually works. Wells are drilled into the ground. A water-based solution is injected underground into the sandstone ore bodies where the uranium sits. That solution dissolves the uranium in place. Then the uranium-bearing water is pumped back to the surface, where the uranium is extracted and processed into what is called yellow cake, uranium oxide, the fuel that goes into nuclear reactors. The water used in this process is pulled from local aquifers. After processing, it is treated and pumped back underground. Opponents, including the Black Hills Clean Water Alliance, the NDN Collective, and the Oglala Sioux tribe, have raised a consistent and documented concern. Once that solution goes underground into a fractured sandstone formation, into an aquifer system that does not respect property lines or permit boundaries, what guarantees that it stays where they say it will stay? The Black Hills Clean Water Alliance has been asking that question since 2009. They are still asking it. Lilius Jarding, executive director of the alliance, said this: I don't think the company understands the depth of public opinion against uranium projects in the Black Hills. The water that flows through the Black Hills does not stay in the Black Hills. It moves, it goes somewhere, and the people who live downstream drink it. I want to tell you what I saw on Highway 13. The Estes Gulch disposal site sits approximately 6 miles north of Rifle, Colorado, on federal land administered by the Bureau of Land Management. It is an engineered containment cell, built to hold what the uranium mills left behind. The U.S. Department of Energy moved approximately 4.18 million cubic yards of radioactive tailings and contaminated materials to that site, from the old rifle mill. from the new rifle mill, from surrounding properties covered with an earthen radon barrier, frost protection layers, and rock erosion protection. The documents describe the contaminants found at the rifle processing sites: uranium, selenium, vanadium, heavy metals, ammonia, sulfates. The alluvial aquifer, the groundwater that sits in the sediment along the Colorado River, was contaminated by seepage from the former tailings piles and raffinate ponds. The Colorado River runs through Rifle. The initial remediation plan called for treating contaminated groundwater and disposing of it into the Colorado River. That plan was revised when discharge limits came back more restrictive than originally anticipated. I drove past that containment mound regularly for over a decade. It does not announce itself. There is no sign that tells you what is inside. It looks like a landscaped hill on the side of a highway. That is what uranium mining leaves behind: a permanent structure, permanent monitoring, permanent liability, held now by the federal government in perpetuity, under a general license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The rifle mills operated from the 1950s through 1984. The monitoring has not stopped. Before there was a Dewey Burdock permit application, before there was an enCore Energy Corporation, before there was a state of South Dakota, there was a treaty. On April 29, 1868, the United States government and the Sioux Nation signed the Treaty of Fort Laramie. It is held today in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. Record Group 11. The treaty established the Great Sioux Reservation. It set the Black Hills aside, and the language of the document is specific: for the absolute and undisturbed use and occupation of the Sioux Nation. 6 years later, in 1874, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer led an expedition into the Black Hills. Miners came with him. Gold was found. The government could not, or would not, stop the rush that followed. By 1877, Congress had taken the Black Hills. The treaty required the signatures of 3/4 of all adult male Sioux to cede any portion of the reservation. The historical record shows approximately 10% signed. In 1980, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the taking of the Black Hills was illegal. It upheld a settlement of $105 million. The Lakota Sioux refused the money. They have refused it ever since. The interest has now compounded to over $1 billion, sitting unclaimed. They are not asking for money. They are asking for the land. That is the ground where enCore Energy wants to mine uranium. At a public hearing on the nearby Craven Canyon uranium drilling proposal, a site with petroglyphs and pictographs dating back more than 7,000 years, a community organizer named Taylor Gunhammer from NDN Collective said this: "You would never drill for uranium in the lawn of the White House. You would never mine for lithium at Arlington National Cemetery." And a woman named Mishanaposhi Camp from Porcupine, South Dakota, said this: "We are the people who live downstream. Whenever the water is affected, anything downstream, we're going to be the ones to drink this water. We report what the document says. The document says the Black Hills were promised. The document says the promise was broken. The document says the people are still here, still downstream, still asking the same question." Here's the pattern the documents show. Uranium is extracted, the company profits. The operation closes, the tailings remain. The contamination spreads slowly through soil and groundwater over years and decades. The federal government steps in, eventually, with a remediation program funded by taxpayers. The monitoring never ends. The liability transfers to the public. The community absorbs what the company left. That is not speculation. That is the documented history of Rifle, Colorado, of Grand Junction, of the Navajo Nation, of 24 abandoned uranium mill sites across the American West remediated under the Uranium Mill Tailings Radiation Control Act of 1978, a law that exists precisely because the industry left, and someone had to stay. enCore Energy calls its method clean, minimal surface disturbance, environmentally responsible. The people of Rifle, Colorado did not know what was coming either. The question this episode cannot answer, because no permit application can answer it, is this: in 50 years, when the uranium is gone and the company has moved on and the permits have expired, who will be left holding this? The answer, every time the documents are read, is the same: the community, the water, the land, and whatever we decided it was worth, whatever we decided was acceptable to leave behind. There is a word that appears in the oldest traditions of stewardship, in indigenous law, in scripture, in the conservation ethic that shaped the early American land movement. The word is responsibility, not to what we can extract, to what we will leave. I was born in the Black Hills. I watched what uranium leaves behind in Rifle, Colorado, and I'm asking the question now, while there is still time to ask it. What will we leave behind? This is Words with Wentz. I'm Linda Wentz. The documents are in the description.
Let the signal cut through the noise, reading between the lines. Every story leaves a trace, unlocking time and space, finding truth with Wentz.